The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official positions of the sponsors, advertisers, or presenters. Advertising does not imply endorsement by the sponsors and presenters.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Lighting Controls podcast. We have another fantastic guest for you today who's been with us before, but she's always worth bringing on time and time again. Before we jump into the conversation, let me just take a minute to remind everyone that today's episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Association.
And is financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, or NAILD. Check out our website, lightingcontrolspodcast.com. We've got all of our episodes, news feed, as well as merch store if you want to support the podcast. Additionally, if you want to check out more about lighting controls, check out NYC Controlled happening this November. It is a brand new conference. I will be speaking. Several other people will be speaking at it. There's going to be a lot of great conversations going on there. And hopefully we will see this show happen again in the future. But otherwise, hopefully we'll get to see you there. Until then, let's get into the conversation. Today, we've got Lynn back on the show. Lynn Gomes, just for those who have not seen you on here before, do you mind just giving us a quick breakdown on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Lynn Gomes. I start up green buildings, basically. But my official title is Senior MEP Coordinator. My unofficial title is I am a Superintendent of the Invisible. So I work for a large general contractor, DPR Construction, and I work to create plans for how we start up our buildings and how our buildings integrate with all the control systems that are on here, not just lighting controls and HVAC, but on our project, we have at least 20 integration points on our project. So on my current project. So yeah, lots of fun. Lots of fun. I love what I do.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here again. It's really great to have people like you who are so passionate for what they do and really want to see our industry thrive as opposed to just following the same basic trends. And, on that topic, I just learned this right before we hopped onto this podcast, but you won a Benner Award. Congratulations. Want to know, what it feels like, first of all, to win that award.
Well, if you know me, you'll know that it's really hard to render me speechless. And winning the Benner Award, I was speechless, and I cried. I cried a lot that day. A lot of happy tears. I'm still kind of tearing up. And I cried because the Benner Award is the highest award that the Building Commissioning Association offers. Think of it like a lifetime achievement award, but that you really have to earn. And basically it's named after Nancy Benner, who was a pioneer in commissioning. And, her big thing, this award honors her because the Benner Award is for people who make commissioning business as usual. And when I say commissioning, it's not just how we colloquially use it in the IES for meaning startup. Commissioning, it's a process. It's consistent with the definition of ASHRAE Guideline 0. It's a soup to nuts. It's a very beginning, project conception phase all the way through occupancy and then through post-occupancy all the way through the building lifetime process. It's a huge process that covers a lot of things, not just MEP systems, but also building enclosure. I would also include cybersecurity in with that. So commissioning's a big thing. The Benner Award is even bigger. I join people like Diana Bjornskov and Carl Stum, who actually, they were the people that did the third edition of the Building Commissioning Handbook. So it's an incredible award. I joined the ranks of some really incredible people, and it's overwhelming and humbling I already said enough, but
No, I mean,
but yeah,
I think it's
a
I think
big
it's a
deal.
well-deserved award that you've been given here. I think, the work that you are doing and have done really is affecting change in our industry on a daily basis. And, I think
Thank you.
ultimately we really are better for your presence in this industry. And, the
Sorry about that. Forgot to put my
no worries.
phaser on stun.
Well, you're a celebrity now, so you can just kind of do that. But
Well, I might be a celebrity, but I still got to answer the phone calls of my project managers that I'm working for. So it'll keep me humble.
we all have to report to somebody, don't we? So, but as far as like what I see, anyways, from my industry perspective, is really just a portion of what you do. It just overlaps with lighting controls and lighting in general. So, commissioning really is this bigger picture item that we kind of, just like a lot of words, we like to hammer into a different shape to fit our need in our industry. Commissioning, what we say commissioning is not what you are doing. I mean, it's a part of what you're doing, but it really is such a small part in comparison to the larger whole, as you explained. And so, it's really fascinating to see how other industries are really starting to enter into lighting in a way that really demands us to go, oh, hold on a second. Maybe we should be looking at this definition in a different way, or maybe we should be thinking about this process in a different way. And so ultimately, from your perspective, what do you think is something that we need to be doing in this industry to really get better positioned and better aligned with what other industries, other groups, other trades are doing?
Gosh, if maybe at a visionary level, I would say it's understanding that lighting is dynamic. With those awards, you always see these beautiful static pictures of the lighting for a bridge or a building or an interior. But now that we have controls, lighting is no longer dynamic. And it's lighting is no longer static, and it's also no longer manual. It's automatic and dynamic now. So, okay, so that's the visionary part, right? I mean, and then the next part is, hey, now that we have this, let's write sequences of operation. All right. So LP16, you can, it's out in the wild. You can use it. We're going to start the committee back up again, I think actually next year to work on the update. And I know that there's a few things that we can add to it, like video conference rooms and shade controls, and heck, any other improvement that the public, wants to comment on and dream up to say, hey, I really need an example sequence for X, or, hey, you didn't quite cover this topic really well. Here's my input on how you could cover it better. Or it could be, hey, I want to step up and be a part of this committee. I want to, bring my experience to add value and to give back to our industry, right, by helping to create the standard. So, sure. So let's see, we went from visionary to practical, boots on the ground. And then, maybe how about the call to action is to visit a site every once in a while. I know it makes it hard with the way design budgets are these days, but, come out and visit it. Come find somebody like me. We'll take you around and say, oh yeah, you know how you put on your plans that the controls are schematic? Well, what that means is our electrical contractor can put them wherever they want, including in the wrong space or the wrong location where, it's, how about daylighting sensors directly above indirect fixtures, or directly occupancy sensors directly above ceiling fans, or where they can see out into a hallway, or, Or how about if you have an infrared only sensor for some strange reason in a bathroom, they're going to put one and only in the center of the room so they can't see the partitions, right? So
it's not
come
just
out,
doing a
come
site
and see
visit.
what we do and how we really do stuff.
Yeah, so it's not just doing a site visit, it's soliciting feedback for your documentation.
Right. And that takes some humility, and that can be hard for people. But take it from me, who has had my ego taken down a notch from being wrong, your ego does heal. So just because you're wrong doesn't make you a bad person.
Totally. No, I think, humility really is an essential component of our industry right now, especially because we do get stuck in this ivory tower mentality of I know everything and you lowly people need to come to me to find out more. And that really creates an us versus them mentality with everybody else. And so it's no longer a collaborative effort. So I think, having that real honest feedback from people utilizing your documentation is going to be really critical to making sure that it is actually well executed.
And what I will add is a phrase that I learned from being a part of the Society of Women Engineers is it's not how fast you get across the finish line, it's how many people you bring along with you, right? This is design and building buildings is a team sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And
unfortunately it's one of those things where you just don't realize you've necessarily made a mistake if no one's pointed it out to you, or if you didn't go to the site to see it, right? So you really do have to visit the site, whether you're the designer or the engineer or whoever, and have these conversations with people in the field and see, oh, hey, that didn't work. I can do this better next time. Or, I really don't love the way that operates, but if I had just done this instead, the only way to learn is to either make those mistakes and then see them or have someone point them out to you. And if you don't take the time to go to sites, you're never, ever, ever going to change.
And if I can pull out one more quote, from Maya Angelou, once you know better, you do better.
Yeah, and that aligns with, some of the things that integrators will tell me every now and then is we have done the mistakes so that you don't have to. And so that's one of the really beneficial things of having an integrator involved in a project is because they've already gone through all of the challenges and the mistakes. They know better and they can look at your documentation and say, don't do that. Do this instead.
Yeah.
Or something to that effect.
And I would say, hey, give you time and budget to do your job, right? Make sure that the integrator, call you up, say, hey, I know you were the integrator on my last project. What do I need to know, right? So that for their future jobs, they can make sure to specify your work so that the subcontractors actually find someone like you, bid that work out, and then also incorporate that into their schedules. So now you have the time and the budget to do your work properly. And if you get that, their design shines.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So, I guess so. We've looked at the four aspects of how our industry can kind of become better aligned with other groups, other industries, other trades. What are we doing well right now? If anything.
What we're doing well is I think people are doing well in that they're adopting LP16.
There has been a huge amount of acceptance of that, which is really heartening to see.
And Rick Miller and I worked on that framework for 10 years before we brought it and before we created that committee. So we listened to designers and owners and contractors and commissioning providers to understand what they need, how they did business, how they did their design. And so we know, we took a lot of feedback and there was a lot of work. And so to see people adopt it, it was really great. And the first time I saw an LP sequence in the wild, one, I cried. Okay. I'm not a crier. I know I've talked about crying twice, but I cried because it meant so much. And I emailed our committee and I said, oh my God, you guys, look at this. We have it real. But then I cried again when our MEP coordinator on that job told me, this is going to make my life so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
And to hear that it made a direct impact for him, again, that's a big, big deal. To know that the work that, you've invested so much time in and work with such a great committee on actually is bearing fruit. Gosh, that's so great. So that is something I think the industry is doing right now.
Which is implementation of sequence of operations and control intent narratives.
Yes. Yeah.
Which, I think, that has been a missing piece for a really long time when it comes to dynamic lighting controls. When it comes to simplistic lighting controls that, pre energy code requirements of like 2015 or earlier, there was a little bit more generosity, I guess, with how lighting controls were expected to operate. It was just sort of like, okay, the lights turn on and off for the most part. There's some dimming, there's some specialty areas, but for the most part, the lights are just, an additional component to think about for the space. Now, lighting really is this holistic experience for spaces, as well as a great way of saving energy to ensure that your carbon footprint is reduced, etc., all of those things. And as a result, lighting controls have become much more complex. And so we really do need that supplemental information to support a lighting control design. It's not just enough to say, okay, these two devices are connected. You need to say, these two devices are connected, and this is what happens when they're connected and when you do this thing. So to really be able to communicate that, the control intent narrative and sequence of operations is a really concise way of achieving that.
For sure. And you can't forget that there's also diagrams that you need, right?
Yes.
You need a network diagram, because the dirty secret is that electrical contractors don't necessarily read the sequence when they're bidding. It's a lot to read, and they don't have a lot of time to put together a bid. And two, those hidden, what I would call hidden requirements that for a networked lighting control system, they don't show up. They don't automatically see, time clock control or differential control or adaptive light levels or demand response. Nobody really sees those as, network control, right? And those network risers are not cheap. So that's why you need a network diagram in addition to your sequence of operation. And then I will also say scenes. We have a lot of scenes in our, in sequences now. Those scenes need a detail for that switch. So
with the network diagram,
yeah.
Who do you think is responsible to put that together? Does that fall back to the engineer? Are we now getting IT involved? Is this part of the integrators? Like how does that all get flushed out?
That's such a good question. Oh man, it's a lot of this right now.
I know. That's why
it's a lot of this, and then it goes over that way. In my ideal world, the lighting control system, there would be a dedicated designer for the lighting control system. And that could be, someone who just specializes in that. I don't think the industry is there yet. I don't think the market will quite bear someone doing that full time yet, but it could be the lighting designer. It could be the electrical engineer, but it also may be the lighting designer in conjunction with the distributor, who would create some of those initial diagrams based on the lighting control system that's selected. Now, that gets into a really big, thorny issue, which I don't believe should be a thorny issue, but standard of practice in the lighting industry is that your specs are open name, and your network diagram may look different depending on which manufacturer you choose. HVAC control systems are sole sourced by default, and nobody ever questions that. But lighting controls, in my opinion, are still specified as if they're in the 1990s, where you could interchange one line voltage device for another line voltage device, and it didn't matter. But that's not the case anymore. These are systems, lighting control systems. So they're all different, and you do have to sole source if you're going to have. I'm going to say yes, you should sole source. I mean, that's my background as a mechanical engineer and dealing with, mechanical HVAC control systems. But
Well, and
it does add value.
I'm going to
for the
stop you for a
project.
second just to make sure, because sole source is a term we have not used on this show before. And I'm curious if you could just give us a quick definition for what that is.
Yeah, sole source is choosing one single vendor for whatever product you're putting in. And so in this case, it's a lighting control system, right? In the 90s, we had lighting controls, which, to this day, we still kind of use lighting control system now synonymously with lighting control system, right? But really, they are different. Lighting controls, that was the 90s. That was line voltage control, not networked control, only room-based control, maybe zone-based control if you got fancy with your hard wiring, right? But now these are systems. The parts are not interchangeable. They have their own ecosystem. They all have different protocols. I mean, they don't necessarily talk to each other easily. So, they're separate.
Yeah. And we I mean, there are other ways of referring to it. Just the term sole source is a new way of referring to it. But yeah, I mean, the practice is there to say brand X is the brand we're using for the system. If you're substituting with a different brand, you need to make sure that you can't just pull parts out and replace them one for one. You may have to change the entire system design to be able to achieve what we're trying to do here. And so that's the benefit of what you're referring to as sole sourced specification, because you're saying this is all designed around this one manufacturer. And that way, I know my design is complete. Whereas if you were to try to do a 3-line specification where you have 3 manufacturers, you may have empty spaces or scope gaps as a result of how you're trying to linearisize everything.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, think about integration. When you have wireless controls, wireless communication, how are you doing? Well, you're forced to do that integration on the back end.
Yep, we lost her.
I think we just lost Lynn for a second there. Well, while she reconnects, there's no reason that we need to stop. We could always keep going. It's interesting. Well, she brings up a lot of good points. Right?
No, you're absolutely right.
Right. I mean, when we've talked about this before, sole sourcing something is important, and I think ultimately, if it's sole sourced or not has a lot of bearing on who's responsible for the drawings. Because if it's not sole sourced, the engineer, the lighting designer can only do so much. Right. There are going to be gaps, as Lynn just mentioned. There are going to be scope gaps. Right. And that's where it falls really to the integrator, hopefully the integrator, right? Assuming that the package is purchased and the integrator is brought on board, they're the ones that would do that.
Yeah, assuming there's going to be an integrator involved. I mean, that's also where sometimes manufacturers end up carrying the bag as well, because of the fact that there is no third-party integrator involved, and somebody needs to be hovering over the project and making sure that everything is working as specified. And so that's why a lot of manufacturers' reps get involved in the design team, because they know their products through and through and can really ensure that that design is airtight.
Right.
And some people look at it as a way of like, okay, you're trying to make the sale, but at the same time, it's like, well, I'm trying to make the sale, but I'm also trying to make sure that you're not missing something, because I know this. You're
Yeah.
familiar with it. You may
Yep.
know lots of products out there, and this goes to that controls designer that we spoke to a while ago, where he has to dig through cut sheets on a regular basis to make sure that what he's specifying is exactly what he needs. And Lynn's
Right.
back.
Lynn's back.
Rookie mistake, guys. I'm sorry. My computer died.
Oh,
Oh, no.
So
Oh,
different computer or different. I'm on my phone right now. Sorry.
okay.
You're
Well,
good. We
Look at that.
we kept going. We were I kind of jumped in and was mentioning to Webster, you made a ton of great points, and one of the big things about whether a system is sole sourced or not has a lot of bearing on who's responsible for those network drawings, right? So if it's not sole sourced, the engineer, the designer can only do so much. So then it really does fall to either the manufacturer, as Webster just pointed out and reminded me and slapped me upside the head, or the integrator. One of the two parties ends up needing to be responsible for those network drawings. And if it's an integrator, you hope that they cover the scope gaps and they fill in the holes. And if it's a manufacturer, you hope they're working with the rep and the design team to fill those scope gaps, because a lot of times the manufacturers just give you a generic one line, which isn't going to help you on a per floor basis and across the entire
Yeah.
building.
Yeah, there's something that we say, I heard quite a few times in there, is hope. And something that we say in construction is hope is not a strategy.
Yeah.
So it's when you say hope, you're leaving a lot unsaid and unknown. And a big part of my job is to say, I heard hope. Let's figure out. Let's put some certainty behind that, and let's get a plan together so that we don't have to hope, that we know what we're going to do, or at least we know how to get us 80% of the way there.
Well, and I think that is really part of that whole initiative with the control intent narrative and sequence of operations with the LP.
Yes.
You're trying to avoid that. Well, I hope that we'll have preset preview this.
Yeah. I hope we'll be able to do DR. I hope we'll be able to do occupancy-based demand control ventilation with the HVAC system. Sure. Let's hope.
Right. Whereas if you
Let's
actually
not hope.
state it, if you specify it, if you have a document that says this is exactly what we need and we're requesting for this project, then there's no question.
Yes. Exactly.
And so I think that I think that's a great point to really bring to our industry, because we do have a lot of times where we're like, well, hopefully this will happen. And it's like, why is this a hope and not a spec? Like, why don't you just write it and put it in your drawings?
Exactly. Well, I don't know how to diagram this. I don't know how to do that. Well, it's okay. Just because you don't know how to do it doesn't mean you don't have to do it at all, right?
Right.
The industry is full of talented, amazing people that can help and that want to help. And it may be a colleague, it may be another IES member, right? It may be a written standard that somebody's produced. It may be your podcast. It may be the Lighting Controls Association and the fantastic training. I love that training.
Education Express.
I refer people. Oh my God. Education Express is amazing. I refer people to it all the time. Okay,
absolutely.
so there's a lot, and distributors, right, and manufacturers. There's a lot of people that want to help you do it right, and it's, again, it's not adversarial. You're not alone sitting in your silo, or your drawing factory, and doing those designs alone. There are a lot of people that want to be there, that want to help, so and help you do what you need to do and not struggle like maybe they did.
Absolutely. I do feel several colleagues right now shouting in my ears, though, going, I have no fee. I have no time. This needs to go out tomorrow. And the unfortunate reality is that we are still strained for project fee and time schedules right now.
Yes.
And it seems like it's getting
Yes.
worse and worse. But I think
It is.
to your point, though, the sooner you can start asking people, the sooner you can start working on these things, the less you do end up hoping, and the more you are certain that it's actually going to happen.
Yeah, again, and it might be a little bit of a blow to your ego to say, I don't know, but believe me, for someone who did not ask for help for a long time and pampered my ego, and then I went out into the real world and got my ego beaten around so many times I've lost count, your ego grows back very quickly, very, very quickly. So
well, and I think, it's really interesting to hear that from somebody of your current popularity, I guess, for lack of a better word. But I mean, you're on, it's not just the award I'm referring to. I mean, you're constantly going on webinars, you're going out to local IES chapters, you're doing speeches, you're getting the awareness out there. This is a public service announcement that you are doing on a regular basis to get people aware of it. And so that's like, you're putting that extra work in to basically say, hey, it's okay that you didn't do this before, try doing it now. And it's not a shame tactic. You're not trying to say, oh, well, shame on you for not doing it up to this point, because most people haven't done it up to this point. So
I mean, and that makes sense. You don't have fee to do it. Nobody knows how to do it. I mean, why would I would say that that's an unreasonable expectation. This is emerging. HVAC, they've been doing sequences of operation for 40 years, right? There's a very big, long standard of practice. Lighting control systems, right, have been digital for and I would say, let's say mainstream digital for what, maybe 10 years? And LP16 came out last year. So why would you expect anybody to do that like now or yesterday or 3 years ago before the standard came out? I mean, come on, right? I mean, be gentle with yourself. The world's hard enough as it is. Your ego gets battered around enough as it is. So, put down the lead pipe and pick up a warm hug.
I think our industry could use that mentality a lot more than it currently practices. I think we definitely beat ourselves up way more than we deserve to do to ourselves, because it's a tough industry right now with everything changing constantly. And so this is just one more of those changes that's happening in our industry. And as a result, it does kind of get whiplash. You kind of just like, I don't even know what to focus on anymore. And so, I guess from that perspective, what is something that somebody brand new to our industry, what would you recommend that they focus on when it comes to lighting control specifically? I mean, lighting, we can go down a bunch of rabbit holes as well. But when it comes to lighting controls, like if I were fresh off the truck and was new to all of this, what would you say I should do?
Take the Education Express courses.
Okay. Sure.
And then I would also say read the O&M manuals.
O&M manuals.
Or they call them IOM manuals. Operation and maintenance manuals, or installation operation manuals if it's an IOM, because that's going to give you a lot of really good tips and tricks for how to install those devices. They talk about, theory of operation, but then there's also installation requirements. And then, if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, go in and look at the programming interfaces, it will tell you all the nitty gritty about, what information is, and really they're generally either called tech bulletins or PIC statements. Lutron and Wattstopper has some really great PIC statements, protocol information conformance statements. But you can also Google technical bulletins. But those are going to give you some really good ins and outs for what data is available, if it can be transmitted, if you can write to that data point, or if it's read only, if it's pushed or pulled from different systems. A lot of really great in the weeds technical details that will help you make those integrations better as well.
And it also sounds like there's some adjacent industry information that could be helpful as well, because you're just using a lot of tech terminology that we don't typically use in our industry. So getting familiar with how data is transmitted, received, how those command structures and syntax are established and what protocols are used could be really beneficial as well, because everything is going digital. We're no longer really in an analog world. And so how information is transmitted from device to device really impacts the success of the system. So to your point, reading all these materials, but also supplementing that so that you're not just reading gibberish, you're actually reading the language that's coming at you.
For sure. And oh gosh, Google and YouTube are super wonderful resources as well.
Absolutely.
I learned how to change my timing belt on YouTube, and I was able to do it in 3 hours. I watched a 45-minute video twice, and then the following Saturday, I changed my timing belt. Worked perfectly. That car had 185,000 miles on it, and then I gave it to my nephew, and it's his daily driver.
Nice.
Buddy, where's the dog? I need to see the dog.
You don't know. The dogs are being, they need to stop being what
they're very noisy today.
I know. But
I have 3 dogs.
We're almost out of time here. I would love to go down the dog train, but we're almost out of time here.
Okay.
So I'm gonna do our summary.
Controls.
Yep. Sorry. Next time we'll do dogs. But I mean, really, this is all really important stuff. I think, getting you on the show, really appreciate it. First of all, like the amount of information that comes out of you every time I talk to you is just such a blessing. And so, the focus here in this episode really is the fact that there's a lot that we can still learn as an industry. There's a lot that we can still do to get better, and that's never going to stop. But the fact that there is sort of this lack of humility, this lack of willingness to say, oh, maybe I did that wrong. Maybe I should do it a different way in the future. Maybe I should get some feedback for that. Maybe I should study some more on X, Y, and Z. It seems like there is sort of a bit of a roadblock there with design and implementation. It's not really clear where that roadblock is coming from or why it's there, but there really is a resistance. And so because of that resistance, there really does seem to be some interference to adopting more modern techniques, more modern workflow methods. But also at the same time, the campaign that you've been doing with the LPs has been hugely successful. I mean, it's only 2 years since it came out, and it really is taking the industry by storm that we're seeing, control intent narratives and sequence of operations populating documents now. So overall,
it's easy as cake, man. It's easy as cake.
And I think it's that people are seeing that it is successful, that it's helpful, that it's really pushing the capabilities and the overall quality of the projects to that next level that we need to be at for widespread digital adoption. And so, the best thing that people can do in our industry is stay current. I mean, it is moving super, super fast right now. But if you can at least stay aware and attentive, and listening to people like Lynn and the IES and IALD, and Lighting Controls Association as well. Like, we're all trying to push information out there so that you can take it and run with it instead of having to reinvent the wheel, trying to, struggle through projects. We really want people to be okay with lighting controls and accept them for what they are, because they're fantastic tools when they're implemented well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can maybe have maybe put in a little slightly different way of thinking about it, since I am a mechanical engineer, by degree, I'm going to think about things just slightly differently, right? But instead of thinking about that all of these changes and information as overwhelming, can we think about it as it's exciting?
Absolutely.
Because to me, if it's overwhelming, I just want to run away. But if it's exciting, I want to come towards it. Oh my God, look, new exciting experience. Yay, I get to learn about this.
That being the case, how do you do that?
ADD? No, but really, I mean, going down this hyperfixation rabbit hole for some new concept, that's really exciting. I love that. I mean, I get to learn new things. I mean, that's what keeps me, going after 20 plus years. God, if I had to do the same thing for 20 years, I mean, I would not be here. I would move into something else. Learning new things, doing new things, to me, that's exciting. So, how do I do it? I just think of it as something new and exciting to learn. Yes, it is scary as all get out at first. I want to put a cuss word in there, but I'm gonna be on my best behavior.
I would appreciate
but it's
not.
Scary as all get out.
Yeah.
It's scary as all get out at first, right? You're going into the unknown. It's like going into a dark room with a bunch of new furniture. Am I going to just bang my shin or stub my toe, or am I going to fall completely over the furniture and break my leg, right? But it's okay. That fear is okay at first. But as you do it, it gets more and more comfortable. So that yes, you can eventually get close to mastery. And even then, maybe you're close to mastery or you've mastered it. There's always new facets, right, to discover in that beautiful little diamond, right? Here's some diamonds right there that is your trade and your field. I love that.
Yeah, it's so important, and there really is, like, you have to be willing to embrace it. None of us would be here if this was the same routine, mundane task every single day. We're all here because of the challenge, right? I truly appreciate the challenge every day. There's always something new. There's something exciting. Like, embrace it. That is what it is. So yes, thank you for coming on. It's been a great conversation. Sequences of operations, vitally important. And if you do want to read more about sequences, aside from reading the standard, you can also, both Lynn and I were both recently quoted in a magazine or in an article that Ruth Taylor from PNNL did in EC&M. And I believe it was titled the sequence of operations and lighting controls. So you can always check that out as a great article. There's a bunch of people who are quoted in there. It's a really good way without reading the standard to get a rough idea and to see some of the information, because some of the tables and ideas are in the article. So it's a great way to just kind of dip your feet into it without diving right into the standard. So Lynn, thank you again so much for coming on today. And I just want to take a minute to remind everyone that today's episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Association.
And it's financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. Check out our website, lightingcontrolspodcast.com. It has all of our episodes, a news feed for the industry, as well as a merch store if you want to support the podcast. Additionally, check out NYC Controlled. It's happening this November. It's going to be a great conference in New York City. Really fascinating stuff. A lot of vendors are going to be there. A lot of talk, a lot of presentations, including the one that I will be giving. So hopefully we'll see you there. But until then, thank you so much for joining us here today. And Lynn, always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much.